Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Wise Up, a money podcast made by and for Gens Y and Z. Today I am proud to have a colleague of mine. We both actually worked at the same publication for a bit. Teddy Stavetski. Teddy, how are you doing today?
Doing phenomenal. Another beautiful day here in San Diego, so nothing to complain about.
Man, I miss San Diego. Diploma over my shoulder from UCSD. It was a beautiful city. If I could go back to La Jolla, it'd be great. I don't have any complaints about Jacksonville at this point, but you know what? Coastal cities. They're pretty great.
It's beautiful.
Warm coastal cities.
Love them. Been out here for 2 years and no complaints.
Hey,
no intentions of moving out.
To my knowledge, you were originally in Florida, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I'm from New Jersey originally. So I was born and raised in South Jersey and then went to college down at the University of Miami where I played football. And then actually kind of jumped all over. I spent a year in LA, 3 months in San Francisco, took a brief little trip to Asia to backpack around, and then settled down here in San Diego about 2 years ago.
Oh, wow. So we could have some stories to tell on this podcast, but at minimum, we swapped coasts because I was born and raised in LA, went to San Diego for school, and then last year moved out to Atlanta, jumped to Nashville, spent some time in Tampa, Miami, and now settled in Jacksonville.
Oh, wow.
So, we've swapped coasts. We might have run into each other at the airport. Who knows?
Yeah. That's what the mid-20s are built for, in my opinion, just jumping around and doing different things.
Yeah, figuring it out, but still living below your means, budgeting, investing well. The things that we try to encourage here. So, I mean, we just bounced around your background a little bit. Just walk us through how you got into talking about finance, being a finance writer. What got you started in this field?
Good question. So my background in finance, or I guess it's always been a personal passion of mine since my college days. As most college students know, not a whole lot of spending money usually for most college students, especially for me because I was on the football team. So that's sucking up 40 hours of my week dedicated to football. Then on top of that, I have my normal academics. So I didn't have time for a traditional job or anything like that. So I got and I didn't have parents. They were blessed enough to send me to college, but they weren't sending me spending money routinely. So I was kind of just left to my own. And Miami's not a cheap city too. So any fun I wanted to have, going out, doing whatever on the weekends, was kind of just on my own dime. So I had to get really creative with different ways that I could make money in my spare time. And that kind of led to just a passion for personal finance, side hustles. I did a whole lot of side hustles in college. And then eventually to investing, and started investing my money my sophomore year of college. So for a while, it was just a side hobby, a side passion. Read every book under the sun about investing, was very self-taught and self-educated in the area. And then after college, went into sales. I didn't go into the traditional finance, financial analyst route or anything like that. I was a finance minor in college, but never actually worked in the finance industry. Like I said, went into sales. Did that for about a year and a half with a media monitoring company called Meltwater. And then quit my job there, took some time off, went to travel. And when I got back, it was late 2019, so a little bit before the pandemic. I had a personal finance blog for a little bit, just on my own time, something just, for fun, a hobby. But at that point, I was, again, looking around for something that I could do remotely because I was living in South Jersey, wanted to move back to San Diego, and I was looking for something that I could do to make some money remotely because I was planning to move. Came across a website called Fiverr and kind of just thought a whim was like, I saw people selling blog posts for 20 or 30 bucks a pop. And then I saw you can branch down into personal finance. And just kind of thought to myself, like, hey, that seems like something I could do. My mom's a writer. My grandma was a writer. So I've always been much more literary focused than analytical. And just started. And it was super slow. I made a gig on Fiverr. Got maybe one request the entire first month. So it was very, very, very slow. And then just gradually ramped up. Second month I got 2. Third month I got 8. And then kind of snowballed. And then met a lot of clients through Fiverr and kind of built, my own business off of their platform. So now I have my own website, still publish articles to my blog fairly often. And I've worked with dozens of different financial companies, fintech startups, investment companies, obviously Investment U for the better part of the last year. And that's where I'm at.
All right, man. Very cool. So, I mean, I'll make sure that we have time to plug it at the very end, but what's the business that you called Start? Or what's the business that you started called?
So it's Do Not Save Money. And it's a content marketing agency. It's kind of just an extension of my blog, but it's a content marketing agency designed for finance companies.
All right, very cool. So yeah, I'll be sure that we plug that at the end again so we can have it out there for people. But you brought up, being on the University of Miami football team, and that's probably one of the more well-known football teams. For those that follow college football, they've got a famous rivalry, the Catholics versus convicts.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm sure that those games were intense. Did you guys ever play Notre Dame?
We played them. When I was there from 2014 to 2018, and we played them my junior year at Notre Dame. Got lost, close game, and then we played them at Miami my senior year, and we trounced them. They were the number 4 or 5 team in the country. We ended up beating them in a blowout. And then we jumped up to number 2 in the polls, I think. So I was around for them.
Nice.
It's actually a little bit interesting because the majority of my family went to Notre Dame. Both parents went there. 2 of my siblings and a few aunts and uncles too. So I'm the black sheep of the family.
You were the black sheep playing for the convicts.
Yeah, I'll never forget when I threw the idea to my dad, like, "Hey, Miami looks pretty fun out. Maybe I'll apply there." He kind of lost his mind and was like, "What? No son of mine's going to apply to Miami. Absolutely not." And then he came back maybe a week later and he was like, "You know what? It's actually not a bad school. We'll go take a look. We'll see if you like it."
All right, so that is an interesting insight, given the rivalry that exists there. But you also brought up, I think, an interesting point in that whenever we hear about these major athletic programs, whether that's college football, college basketball, with Duke, UNC, Kansas, things like that, we imagine that these athletes that are on these teams are living beautiful lifestyles. Because whenever you hear about recruitment day, ESPN has a whole day set aside where they have students picking out caps, and it's amazing. But then when you start talking to a lot of these players that are on these teams, the money's not really there. Sure, they might have gotten a scholarship to attend the school if they were 5-star athletes, but outside of that, there wasn't really much in terms of spending money. And then I think it was a couple of years ago, finally, the NIL was passed. The name, image, and likeness law was passed that allowed student athletes to monetize, any likenesses that they had, whether it was jersey, autographs, things of that nature. So for the first time, they had the ability to make money off of themselves. Whereas previously, even when EA Sports was making the NCAA football, video games, they didn't get anything from it. And that was one of the main reasons why EA stopped making that game, was because the students were like, "Hold up, no, this is us in the game. We should be getting paid like any other students." So, what was that like for you? As that college student who was in the program, who was on a football team, one of the biggest in the country, but still kind of figuring it out monetarily.
That's a great question. I think college football is the perfect encapsulation up until the NIL bill passed of. It looks super glamorous because all the fans tune in on game day, so they see the fame, the fame depending on who you are, and the pinnacle and being out there and you're on the field and it must be awesome, but you don't see the hours and hours and hours that go into practice and watching film and working out and waking up at 6 a.m. every day for months. So I don't think a lot of people really realize how much work it takes to be a college athlete. And as it relates to the NIL bill, for me, that was always kind of one of the biggest injustices out there, at least in the term of in the college world, that people who are excelling on the court or on the court or on the field weren't able to make money off their own persona, their own name. So you heard a lot of stories prior to the NIL bill about people, like Johnny Manziel. They sign autographs and they sell them for $5,000, and then the NCAA swoops in and they ban them and they slap them on the wrist. And to me, that was always just the most confusing thing, because when you look at the college football world, everyone is making so much money. Nike and Adidas are signing $1 million contracts with every single school. The school's making money. The coaches are, top head coaches are making $10 million a year now. Even D coordinators are making close to $1 million. Even when you look at the SEC and the different leagues, the commissioners there are making millions of dollars, or at least six figures, mid to high six figures. And it was like everyone was cashing in on this, gigantic spectacle, except for the people on the field doing the entire event. And even when you watch commercials, you would see, for example, I was there, I played with Brad Kaya, who was a very successful quarterback when we were there. And you would be watching a commercial, on for CBS of Miami versus Florida State coming up, and they had Brad Kaya up there featuring Brad Kaya versus Jameis Winston. And it was just always so, intriguing to me intriguing and kind of pissed me off for some of my teammates that Brad's not getting any money for his name being up there, they're literally promoting him versus Jameis Winston, and they're selling his jersey in the bookstore, and he kind of just doesn't really get to cash in on that at all. So I think the NIL deal is long overdue, and I'm really excited for the college athletes now. Obviously, I wish could jump back in time, and I wish they were a little more proactive with getting it passed. But I think it's just great to give college students a lot more flexibility, because the reality is that a lot of college athletes aren't even going to go pro. So their time to cash in is when they're in college. If you're maybe like a college athlete who excels at the college level, that's kind of, and you might have a following within your fan base, and that's kind of your time to shine. So it seems really unfair to deprive kids who aren't the top elite, the 1% who are going to go play 10 years in the NFL. It seems really unfair to deprive that middle sector of kids from their opportunity to brand themselves and kind of make money from their talents. So I think it'll be great for the industry, and it's long overdue.
I mean, yeah, you are not wrong. I think most of what people heard coming out of the industry, or I guess who aren't part of it, just the average viewer, there were always the main two arguments that I ever heard against students getting paid for their name, image, and likeness was, oh, well, they're on scholarship anyway. So that's them getting paid. They got a free ride to a school that academically they wouldn't get into. Unless we're talking about Duke for basketball, because Duke is a very elite academic school besides that, I don't know if that argument really holds water for most D1 schools athletically. Most of these students, even if they aren't Ivy League scholars, can still hold their own academically.
Right.
It was a running joke that University of Alabama was lax, with students academically, where you still have to pass classes to be on the team, but they were lax with it. I don't know how much of that is truth versus just us making jokes about how dumb college football players are because they run around hitting each other. But also that stigma. Did that ever get into the team, or just from the outside looking in, everyone just saw you as brutes who were just running at each other at full speed trying to hurt each other, or what was that like?
It's definitely a stigma. If anything, you would get just a lot of surprise when kids actually showed up for class. With that being said, a lot of at least on the football team, a lot of guys are there, they're gifted with their athletic abilities. It's not always their academic abilities that are keeping them up. So I feel like everyone's got different gifts and everyone excels in different ways. That's how I would put it.
It's a very tame way of not throwing anyone under the bus.
But there's also
Kaya.
Well, on that point, there's also 120 kids on the team. So when you have a group that's that big, everyone's there. Not everyone's going to be a top scholar who's getting a 4.0, but some kids are. Some kids, they're in the middle. Some kids are towards the lower end. It's just kind of how it goes.
Sure, and to that point, the other assumption that I think a lot of people unfortunately miss, it's probably a tale that they themselves never went far in sports, was the assumption that if you're playing at one of these big schools that you're going to go to the NFL. And that just, for most student athletes, is not accurate. You've got, on any game day roster, correct me if I'm wrong, 53 players that are active on game day. And on any yearly draft, there's 210 total players drafted. And if you've got 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, let's call them big D1 schools, we're already over by quite a bit, even if every single player had the opportunity to get drafted. And that's not how it works. At any level of athletic play, people who are great at elementary school might not be the best at middle school. People who are great at middle school might not be the best in high school. People who are 5-star high school athletes might not be 5-star college athletes. And those that were great at college might not be great pros. At every level, the success rate lowers, drastically. And that's why it's still impressive to be a D1 athlete. A D1 athlete could probably show up any random schmo any day of the week. They might get, beat by the guy who went pro, but people kind of, they underwhelm themselves, thinking oh, they're playing for University of Miami, Bama, whomever. They're fine. They're going to go pro. They're going to make money. It's well, not really. That's not guaranteed. That's the hope. But before, finally this past year or two, the XFL and USFL have become more serious leagues. But before then, you didn't make it the NFL. You went to the Canadian Football League and tried Maybe.
Yeah. And even when you're playing there, you're making like, I don't know, 50K, maybe 100. Like I don't know what those guys are making, but it's not the kind of FU money that you make in the NFL. It's very kind of, I don't know, more just like standard income at that point. And that's a great point that you brought up too, because we would actually get that speech once a year. We would have a financial coach come in and really just highlight how difficult it is to make it to the NFL. You know, like break it down, look at the percentages, and say it's just the statistical reality that 99% of the kids in this room, you're not going to go play in the NFL. If you are in the 1% that makes it, you're probably going to play for 3 years as the average. You know, you're going to you'll make six figures, you go low to mid six figures, but that's not enough to live on for the rest of your life. So that was a big highlight, at least at Miami, from my experience. They would definitely drill that down into you. So they would really try and encourage you to prepare for life after football, they always called it.
So you're saying that not every football player plays for 23 years like Tom Brady does?
Absolutely not.
I am shocked. I feel lied to. But I'm actually surprised that they brought in a financial coach. I had never heard of that happening. To your knowledge, does that happen only at the University of Miami, or if you had friends who are on other universities, did that happen at a lot of places?
I think it's fairly common. They brought him in at least once a year for 4 years when I was at Miami, and we had two different head coaches too, so it was kind of a prevailing trend.
So every new head coach, they brought the guy back just so that the head coach could hear the speech too, in case he wasn't there next year.
Right.
Like, hey, buddy, don't get ahead of yourself.
A lot of coming in hot. This is my dog, by the way.
Ooh, featuring dog Teddy, you became the second most important person on screen.
Featuring Cone. I was saying, ideally, I mean, most head coaches you would hope have their players' best interests at heart. So I feel like the head coach would really be doing a disservice to their players if they're misleading them and saying that they're 100% going to the NFL, and if they're not preparing them for what's likely going to be the reality is that they're not going to make it. So if they're not preparing them for that, they're really doing them a disservice.
So what does that process look like? Because I know, like, again, ESPN, these major broadcasting services make a big deal out of Senior Day. The final home game for seniors. What's the prep leading up to that? Let's say that you're someone who knows that you're not going pro. Is it the same level of pageantry as someone who knows that there is a next step, or is it far more somber to know this is it for me?
That's a good question. I would say it's pretty somber all around. Even if you're expected to go to the NFL, it's still very, very far from reality. There's maybe one or two kids per team who it's like, oh, they're probably going to get drafted. So I think everyone graduates with a little bit of uncertainty. Like a lot of guys, there's a massive gray area where they're doing pro day, they're hopefully getting invited to the combine, they're doing recruitment interviews, and they're scratching and clawing trying to make a roster somewhere so they can get an opportunity to play and perform. So I think it's definitely somber with a lot of uncertainty too.
Oh, wow.
And football is interesting because it's a game you never play again once you kind of hang up the cleats. Like, it's not like basketball or tennis or a lot of other sports where you can play for the rest of your life. Once you're done, you're done.
Yeah, I think it's quite rare to hear about a pro football player who tries making them. I think Brett Favre tried. No, he did. He retired for a few months and then came back. But he by that point had been a pro for a bit, so he had a resume underneath him. I'm assuming that it's far less common, if at all, to have a college football player not make it, try the CFL, XFL, USFL, whatever options there are, hang up the cleats for 2 years, and then suddenly 3 years later make a practice squad and then an active roster. I would wager that's very rare.
Exceedingly rare, yeah.
So you're in that process. So going back, kind of focusing on the financial aspect of things. So people can have an understanding, how much time out of a week does being a collegiate athlete take out of you?
A lot. It depends on the time, at least for football, it depends on the time of the year. Because in the springtime, we have spring practice, spring ball. Then we have summer sessions that you have to be down there. That's more just working out and not full-fledged practice. And then we have mini camp, and then you have the season, and then you have your bowl game. So it's a lot of different rotations throughout the year. But say if we're in season, usually you're waking up. We would have breakfast at 7 a.m. It was either 7 or 8, and they would have us in meetings for maybe 2 hours. So we would spend, some time in special teams meetings. Then you go to your offense meeting, team meeting, position meeting. And that's actually where the bulk of your time is spent in the college football world, is in meetings, watching film. And then we would go on the field for maybe 2 hours, and then we would usually work out for about an hour. So the entire day is maybe 4 or 5 hours. So that doesn't even include like the games, because then the game day takes up your entire Saturday, and you're usually prepping the night before too. So it depends on your role on the team, and like not everyone has to go to every event, but I'd say like 40 hours a week, 50 hours.
Oh wow! So basically a full-time job.
Basically a full-time job.
So, would you wager, or would you reason then that that's why a lot of college athletes don't have other income coming in, because they're so focused on school and what is essentially a full-time job in their positions that they don't have the opportunity to work outside of it?
100%, yeah. Because college in itself is basically a full-time job too. If you have classes, you have multiple classes a day, and then on top of that, if you're spending 40 hours or 50 hours, that's kind of where my dilemma came in, because you just literally don't have the time to work an extra job. Because most jobs are going to be like, okay, be here from whatever 9 to 5, or even if it's like a couple hours, you just can't fit it in because you have team obligations and classes, and you really either have to find something flexible or you just can it altogether.
Wow. So you're saying the stories of people just partying every night and living their best life wasn't exactly the norm for people on the team.
Some kids have more energy than others. But that's not really a sustainable lifestyle, in my opinion, if you're a college athlete. Not that it doesn't happen, but
just less frequently than we project onto people.
Right.
Okay. So you come out of University of Miami, you finish your years there. And before we move off the topic, let's say there's someone listening who is still thinking about being a college athlete, who's currently in high school, middle school, whatever it is, who wants to go pro one day. Is there any advice that you would give them, whether that's setting expectations, managing their time, effort, any advice that you could give them?
For high school athletes who are looking to go professional or looking to go to the next level?
Yeah.
I would say definitely be prepared for the work. Make sure that the sport is something that you really love, because the journey is going to end at some point. So in some cases, it might make sense to just end it in high school if you're not really, really passionate about it. But most athletes are really passionate about it. So my big advice would just be prepared for the work that's going to come with it, and kind of take it in stride. And then also just be humble. Kind of come in with a eager to learn mentality. Put your head down. Bring your lunchbox to school and everything, and be ready to work hard.
All right, sounds great. So you finish at the university, and now you have your degree in business, I believe, minor in finance. So what starts you off on that path? Or I guess what was your first focus, in trying to create financial business related content?
Good question. So I really, really wanted to work in the financial industry out of college. Did like 20 interviews, 50 interviews, whatever, a lot. And I always felt like they went well, but I never got a second call back. It would always, I never was able to progress to that next step. And it's because I'm not a very analytical person. I'm not great with numbers. My background wasn't anything super technical in terms of like the classes I was taking and things like that. So I think that really held me back. So after college, it was much easier to just go right into sales. That's kind of a natural progression for a college athlete. Sales is very personable, and it's requires a lot of hard work, and you kind of reap the rewards of the work that you put in. So it's kind of a natural progression for a lot of college athletes. So I worked in sales for 1.5 years, but always kind of had the passion for personal finance. It was always something that I was doing on the side, kind of doing anyway. And it wasn't until I came across the platform Fiverr and kind of realized that I never really realized that you could make money writing about finance. I just didn't know that was kind of an industry at that point. So I guess coming across Fiverr was really big, and just being open to that, or being exposed to that opportunity.
Yeah. You said previously, if I remember from your intro, that you had started investing your sophomore year at the University of Miami?
Correct.
So what got you into that?
Just trying to make more money. trying to to take what little money I had at the time and turn it into more money.
So were you day trading?
I was never big into day trading. I'm still kind of not, but more, I would say, swing trading or even just long term. You know, the earlier you get your money in the market, the longer it can kind of work for you.
Yeah, that's that old saying, you know, timing the market over timing the market.
Right.
I know that a lot of people who are first getting into finance, getting into it, investing specifically, usually fall prey to those, I want to call them predatory because they are, those ads or infomercials of the luxurious life of a day trader. I've talked about when I was getting into the space, those were the first ads that I saw when I was just Googling how to invest. You know, fundamental analysis, technical analysis if I was getting more into it. But if I was just looking up anything investing related, every other ad, if not 2/3 of them, were some guru selling me something.
Right.
An inundation of it. So do you remember that, or were you ever faced with that?
I mean, I see those same ads quite often, and it's all anything that sounds too good to be true probably is. And the other thing I always think about is if this guy really made, you know, $100 million, whatever, $10 million from trading, why is he selling me a course type of thing?
Yeah, why isn't he advising the richest people in the world about his trade secrets?
Exactly, or retired on a beach somewhere.
Or retired on a beach somewhere. I mean, San Diego, Jacksonville, we've got our beaches. You know, if anyone's listening who's made $13,000 today and they want a beach to go to, you know, ask one of us. It's fine. But legitimately, I think that's one of the bigger issues where once you've been in the game long enough, you understand that the way these people make money is by selling you the courses on how to make money.
Right.
Yeah, it's not really the content in the course, it's them selling you the courses on how to make money that gets them filthy, stupid rich.
And once you kind of figure that out, it becomes a lot easier to ignore them and to scroll past them.
Becomes a lot easier, but every other week there's a new guru, and it's getting kind of annoying. I mean, especially in the crypto space now, where a new altcoin is created every other day, it feels like. So suddenly you turn on TikTok, because that's now the go-to social media for Gen Z. And especially if you're looking up investing, money, crypto, all of these altcoins that are being peddled. I thought Dogecoin was like the tip of the iceberg when it came to altcoins. Then you start getting into, I've forgotten the names out of all of them because there are tens of thousands. The interview that I did on Wednesday was with a crypto expert, and we were discussing how most of these coins are literally, they're pump and dumps. They're created, they're sent out, and people just rug pull them. And that's it. You've lost your money. And unfortunately, I think that's the issue with any new and evolving industry, is that the first ones to take advantage of it are the people who are just taking advantage of it.
Right.
And before there are any guardrails in place, it's just, we'll take our money before people realize that we're robbing them blind. So, you start investing, somehow managing to do that. So how did you manage your time investing? Did you automate it? How were you investing while still juggling class and the football team?
Good question. When I first started, I read a lot about investing. All the classic books. If you go to any like top 10 investing books of all time, that was what I was going through. And the general consensus that I read, there were two main takeaways. It was like, don't day trade because most people, 99% of people lose money, was one general consensus. And the other, another widely spouted piece of investing advice is just buy index funds and let them ride the market up. That's kind of the easiest, most general way to make money. So when I was in college, that was my main, I didn't do anything crazy. I was just buying index funds, and then every now and then buying another, stock that I liked here or there. But it was pretty hands off just because I didn't really have the time to dedicate to it. So it's something that kind of just ran passively in the background.
Nice. So as you spent more time in the field, you have that literary background, which I'm sure was very helpful for you. Kind of jealous. You start writing. What was that like? So you said that it was very slow picking up, but what was just getting your work out there and having it read? Was there any pressure for you where it was like, oh my Lord, are people going to hate what I have, tear it to shreds? They're going to think I'm an idiot. Was that a fear for you, or was just, I know what I'm talking about, or at least it sounds pretty because I know how to write?
That's an excellent question. There was definitely a little bit of fear and I guess self-doubt I feel like whenever you're putting anything that you create, any type of, like art is or whatever, anything that you're creating that's your own work, there's definitely that fear that people are going to trash it or, tear it up and throw it up and throw it back in your face. And especially for me, because I didn't have like a literary background, it was just something I'd started. So it was very a little bit weird. And, for me, I wrote on my own time, and I, had heard from teachers and whatever in the past that I was a good writer. But suddenly when people are paying for it, I definitely had a sense of like, is this going to be good enough for them? Are they, I hope they don't get pissed at me, and I hope it's okay, for whatever they need it for. One way I compensated for that early on is I just had a money back policy. Like on my Fiverr profile, it was, hey, if you don't like it, I'll just refund your money, or I'll edit it and I'll do edits until it's, fits your specifications. So that was one way that I kind of dodged that feeling. But honestly, Fiverr was great early on because it has kind of like a feedback system. So every time you do a transaction, I rate them as a buyer, they rate me as a seller. So early on, I got a lot of just 5-star reviews, which are always nice to get. But more than anything, it was kind of that a validation from someone who's not, that I don't know personally. So that was very big early on to be like, oh, okay, like 10 people this past week have said that what I did was good. So maybe I'll just keep going.
I know the feeling. When I first started publishing content, it was terrifying. Sending out my first...
Even when it's ghostwritten, it really is.
Thankfully, I never did the ghost... I don't know if thankfully. I never did the ghostwriting part. I started publishing, and it was straight, put my name on it.
Really?
This is my name. I jumped straight into the deep end. If you're going to tear me to shreds, you're going to tear me to shreds, because my name is on it. And there aren't too many Gabriel Shabbats in the world. I've looked it up. I tried to check to see if anyone else could take the fall for me.
Pass along. No, I've been scammed. It wasn't me.
That wasn't me. That was the other guy. Haven't you checked Facebook? It was obviously him.
That's funny. That's honestly what I should have done. The bulk of what I write, or even today, is still just ghostwriting. It's still ghostwriting.
No, I think that stepping into it, immediately putting my name on it, was a baptism by fire. It immediately got me used to, this is the pressure of writing. It needs to be good because your name is on it, so don't mess it up.
Right.
And that was, the pressure that I put on myself. And I think that that's what helped me progress and want to be better, because I knew that it was my own reputation that was at stake. It wasn't just the seller that was getting it. It was, once it's published, like when we were both at Investment U, it was, sure, if the editors got it and they didn't like it, they told me, well, and I actually never had that happen, so we're okay. But then once they release it, now it's everyone else with an internet connection who's reading it, and it's my name on it. So everyone and their mother. So it was terrifying. And then once they started making visual content, starting in the podcast, this first, similar to you, with Fiverr, when you start making, social media related things like I did back in, I think it was May. I want to say I started back in May. It was extremely slow to start. Those first few views, I'm pretty sure half of them were my parents. And I love them for it. They help the algorithm figure out that, okay, we should be pushing this out because it suddenly has a lot of views. I'm like, no, that's my dad. Thank you, Dad.
My mom watched it 10 times.
I love you. I appreciate it. Listen, man, you love to see it. But as it kept going, got more comfortable with it. I remember the first TikTok I made was about budgeting, and I stared at my phone without hitting record for a solid 6 minutes straight. I could not bring myself to hit record and talk. It was terrifying to me. It was legitimately excruciating. But then as I kept doing it, kept putting content out there, gaining followers, not getting torn to shreds in the comments, I was like, all right, cool. I know what I'm talking about here. Well, thankfully. But people don't hate it. I don't know if they love it, but at least they don't hate it. So I'll keep tinkering with it and see where it goes. And that confidence snowballed into now having this platform where it's my face and my voice constantly. If there's no guest on, it's just me talking for an hour, and it's terrifying. But you get used to it. So that was also just a massive step. But when you were doing it, so with Fiverr, I'm sure that you're getting paid for it initially. Did you monetize because you said you had a blog as well. Did you monetize the blog early on, or have you?
So a little known secret between me and you that I never told anybody is kind of like you said with your first views. My blog got like zero traffic when I first started it out. I didn't tell clients that, but it was nice to have. I would still have it there more as a body of work than anything, because people would kind of come and they'd see that and be like, oh, okay, like this kid or this guy, he writes about finance apparently because he's got a blog. And I remember when I was first starting out, in the back of my mind, I'm like, these people don't know that. Same thing. I got 5 views last month, and they were all me, like from my phone.
That's fine. No one needs to know. It's a secret between me and you.
Exactly.
But I mean, it's what you got to do, because the odds of someone like me, you, just blowing up overnight. Sure, that'd be great if we both went viral tomorrow, blog, social media accounts, businesses, whatever it was. But realistically, that's probably not going to happen. It's more just the small deposits, so to speak, the putting the work in daily, slowly accumulating to the point where eventually you've put enough work in, you've put in enough deposits that you've built up enough. Kind of like what you said with Fiverr, where initially it was 1 gig in a month, and then it was 2 gigs the next month, and then it snowballed from there. But no one saw all the work going into it beforehand.
100%. I think that's with most projects too. Like very few people. I mean, no one really starts out with 100,000 followers or whatever, like 1 million viewers. Like everyone starts pretty much from zero, and it's just a matter of slowly and consistently building up. Yeah,
the consistency is key, which is a key point also in investing, as we've kind of talked about. So you started writing, and then your company now is called Do Not Save Money.
Correct.
Right? So you got to explain that one, because I'm sure there's someone who's hearing that going, why is a finance person telling me not to save money? Do they not know what's going on in the economy right now?
So that's pretty much just my philosophy. I feel like all money should be invested and not saved. If you look at a savings account, it is going to pay you 0.01% interest annually. Not 0.1, not even 0.01%. So when you look at the return that your savings account's going to get, it's just so small. It's almost a slap in the face. It's almost embarrassing. And when you look at the stock market, most years it's going to return about 10%. So when you look at the dichotomy there of 0.01% versus, approximately 10%, that was kind of just my philosophy. Why would you ever keep your main bulk of savings in a savings account? That just makes no sense. And then I named it Do Not Save Money just as the little play on words to kind of catch people's interest, to kind of drive readership that way.
Yeah, it's definitely an ambitious title, that is for sure, because people will look at it and go, wait, there are red flags here, I feel like. But then they look at it. It seems like it makes sense. You got me with that title. I don't like it. I feel like I got bamboozled here. But you're right. With savings account, I know that some now are doing better. There are high yield savings accounts at some institutions that are.
There are some 2%. That are better. There are some that do like 0.5%. I think some online banks, but even that, like, it's 0.5%. Like, I don't know. Still.
Yeah, there are some that do 0.5%. But I know when I was doing an episode, I think a week or so ago, there were some companies that are doing like high yield savings accounts, which there are barriers to entry to, but those will get up to like 2% now.
Okay.
Which is better than what it has been for most of its tenure, but still less than what the markets are returning.
Right.
So still, if you're looking at a savings account that's even assuming 2.5% at these high yield savings account levels, what's the 3-month treasury yield going for right now? Also probably like 2.6%, I think, last time I checked. So investing at the lower stages, if you need the money tomorrow, you can still invest the money. If you don't need that money tomorrow, I think the general rule of thumb, which I disagree with, but we'll discuss that if we need to, is that if you need the money within the next 5 years, you shouldn't invest it. But if you need it 10, 20 years down the line, then you're safe investing it. I think that's a little disingenuous. It's a cutoff of 5 years. I think if you need it in 3, invest it for 2 years, unless we're in, again, a major market correction, in which case maybe don't put everything in right now. Fine. If it's extremely short term in that sense, fine. I think that's why they say 5, so that in case a market has a recession next year, you're not pulling money out immediately. But in general, during a normal bull market cycle, why can't I invest for 2 years? I'm getting long-term capital gains at that point.
Right.
My money's been in for a while. What's the issue here? I've never liked that rule. There are a lot of finance rules I don't like, but that's one of the big ones.
There are a lot I don't like too. I would agree with that as well. Like, I mean, in my opinion, you can invest your money. You should keep it invested for as long as possible. But if you want to put it in and take it out a week later, like, it, might be better than nothing. And the other thing is
from capital gains.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be an all or nothing too. Like, if you have $10,000, you don't need to put it all in and then take it all back out. Like, you can put
Absolutely.
it in, take out maybe $200 next week if you need it or whatever.
Yeah, everyone's risk is different. Everyone's timelines are different. Right. Their goals are different. So that's also why I don't like just generic rules.
Right.
The high-level generic rules of start investing as early as often, fine. I completely agree. Because then you're not getting to the point where you're 30, 40, 50 and going, wait, should I have started earlier?
Yeah.
Wait. So telling people in general to invest at an earlier age, that I'm fine with. But after that, when we start giving out general laws of finance, I go, well, that really depends. I really don't know how I feel about that, especially if someone is themselves confident. For instance, someone like me or you who know about finance because we live this world now, we write about it, we talk about it. I don't know if we would have the same, let's call it risk aversion or lack of knowledge or general ignorance about the industry as someone who is literally a teacher, the blue-collar worker who's not educated and just literally needs a generic rule to tell them what to do things. There needs to be different frameworks in place for people depending on what they're doing, and I think that's also why educating people in general, in case they get to that point where they want to invest more actively, they can do so without the stigma of, no, you should just be doing X because that's how we do it in the industry.
Mm-hmm. The way that I always think about it, obviously with my background in football, is it's very similar to working out and getting healthy physically, where there are several overarching rules that apply. So if you're working out, eat healthy, get your cardio in, and stretch often. There are kind of some basic rules that apply to everybody. But then there are also specific goals, like because everyone has different physical aspirations. So some people might be trying to gain a lot of muscle, and they're going to need a different workout plan than someone who's trying to run a marathon or lose 10 pounds. So there's different workouts for different types of goals. So I think finance is kind of the same way, where depending on what your financial goals are, there should be different types of things that you're doing with your money.
Yeah.
So if you have to follow those for everyone to follow the same laws is kind of just ridiculous.
And I'm not a fan of it, but we can fight the industry later. I'm sure we'll have plenty of time on it on our respective platforms. Right. But there was an article that you had published a few weeks ago now that had caught my eye, something that I was talking about in my inner circle, where Amazon acquired Roomba. And I remember when the news story broke, I want to say this was a month ago. I don't remember anymore. These days are blending together. About a month ago when Amazon acquired Roomba, initially everyone was confused. Why does Amazon need a vacuuming company? And I'm sitting there going, data. Amazon Web Services is the biggest part of Amazon. It's their most profitable sector. They want the data. And then a few days later, like you read my mind, you publish an article about it, talking about the mapping technologies that Roomba has, where even before, if I remember correctly, Roombas had the capacity to remember where furniture was, how the layout of your house looked like. So essentially, they even at that point had fairly detailed maps about what your home looked like. So now Amazon has access to that. Theoretically, at this point, Amazon could go, okay, we know they have furniture that's here, a house that's this big. Now we can target ads to them based on what we think they might need. And it's terrifying to me. I mean, I will tell this as an anecdote, and it's a joke, but I'm terrified. My sister and brother-in-law, their home is Amazoned up the wazoo. I mean, they have a smart oven. They have an Alexa in practically every room. Literally, the living room has one, the dining room has one, the kitchen has one, the basement has one, the upstairs has one. You could not get away from it. So the first time I visited their house, I walked in and as loudly as I could went, "Hey, wiretap, how do I make pancakes?" And unfortunately, no one responded. I was very disappointed with that. But when I first moved out of LA, I was staying with them. And for weeks, I couldn't sneeze without Alexa responding. Like, did you mean? I'm like, no, I didn't talk to you.
Hello.
Stay out of this. It was terrifying because again, there's an Alexa in every room. I'm pretty sure Amazon knows how I wipe at this point. I didn't. I was not a fan. But now they have acquired essentially, it's a mapping company. It cleans your house too, but it maps at the same time. I swear to God, if my sister and brother-in-law get a Roomba, I'm never coming to visit them. It's just not happening at that point. And I think this was in the article as well, Amazon had their own robotics division that was building their own vacuum cleaners that had the capacity to have cameras in them. Correct? Or was that
correct? Yeah, one of the later models.
So now we're at a point where these robots, these vacuum cleaners, can see you and the environment and can map your house. And that is terrifying to me because I think there was a Reddit thread that you included in your article where people were already talking about how horribly this could go. You know, you've got a Roomba cleaning, a 16-year-old's room. And it sees, pregnancy test that was thrown under the bed, and suddenly it starts spamming, the account that was linked with the Amazon, which might be their parents, going, "Oh, congratulations! Here are recommended items for expecting parents." And it's you don't want that to happen, but unfortunately, that's a realistic thing because this happened back in 2011, 2012, where a teenage girl had been looking stuff up online, I think, while the Target browser was open after she had found out that she was pregnant. So suddenly Target started sending the family coupons for maternity-related items. And the parents were like, what on earth are you talking about? And then finally the girl came clean to her parents. Target knew that the girl was pregnant before the parents did, which was terrifying. So now Amazon has that same power, but even more so. And it was hilarious to me because remember I told people when this news first broke, I was like, it's for the data. They want to be able to map your house. And my mom was like, you're a conspiracy theorist. I'm like, no, trust me. I'm not crazy on this one. And then suddenly every other news outlet was also talking about the mapping capacities of Roomba and their own technology departments, and it was terrifying to me.
Yeah.
And what was it like for you writing it? Yeah, that was my lead in there.
Yeah, I remember seeing the news, and Roomba and Amazon were just two companies that you never, I would never put those two together, but I remember the second I saw the news, kind of thought the same thing where I was like, wow, that's a great acquisition by Amazon. That makes so much sense, especially when you look at Amazon's plans. They're really focused right now on trying to build out the smart home, so they have Amazon Alexa, they have the Echo Dot, they own, I think, the doorbell company, Ring, I think it's called. So now with the Roomba, they're really positioned to kind of dominate the smart home industry. But I think the most concerning thing is, I mean, for me personally, I do trust Amazon. I know that Amazon as a company is just so focused on providing an excellent experience for their customer. So they're overly focused on that. And I do really trust them as a company. So I'm not super alarmed by it. But I think the most concerning thing is that you kind of have to trust, you're kind of forced to trust them. So luckily I do. I don't have a Roomba, with that being said, or a lot of Amazon products, to be honest. But I think it's just kind of the balance of
just
power.
A coincidence. I'm sure that was not intentional. It just happened that way, that my home is not bugged.
So I do think it's, kind of just the balance of power where it's just so tough to keep Amazon out of your home these days. And you just feel like they are kind of always listening. And even when they're trying to help, it's like you don't always want that help. Like you said, you don't want them to be recommending products and automatically sending you things, and you just kind of want some privacy.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that you have another call that you're going to need to jump to pretty soon. So just a reminder for everyone, the website is donotsavemoney. Is that .com, .web, or is that just donotsavemoney.com?
.com, yeah.
All right. Is there any other place that people can follow you, follow your content if they're interested?
Nope. Do Not Save Money is the main one. We're on Twitter. Give us a follow on Twitter. But other than that, no.
All right. So everyone, thank you for tuning in today. Hope you learned a few things besides maybe being terrified about the future of smart homes. Enjoy the rest of your night, and we'll talk to you guys next time. Thank you for tuning in, and have a good one.
Awesome. Be real. Thank you.